Welcome to the Talent Show. I am so glad that you decided to join us today. It's an amazing show with an amazing conversation with an amazing individual. My friend Mike McCoy, he was kind enough to sit down. We talked crypto, we talked decentralization, we talked data privacy and sovereignty. I think you're going to like what you have to hear. As a matter of fact, I know you're going to like it because this is your future. Decentralization, detaching from corrupt institutions is the calling we all must heed. Mike saw around the corner several years ago. He saw blockchain and the technology of blockchain underneath the fad of crypto. And he's been working to bring blockchain into the mainstream for several years now. When I met Mike, it was online. We were both interacting on LinkedIn. And it's a beautiful thing when those online relationships start to take root in the physical world. And I really, really appreciate Mike for joining me and talking crypto, talking how do you get involved in these communities, and what are they for? Why should you be interested? So if you see yourself relying on Facebook or any other major social media platform, and even if you find yourself relying on institutions in general, figure out, maybe there's a different way. Figure out, maybe there's a way to be completely self-reliant in this regard where I used to abdicate responsibility to other places. You can protect your own data. You can protect your own info stream. You can build your own community. Blockchain unlocks it for you. So we're going to get into the pod here in just a second, but I want you all to remember, go towards difficult things. It might be uncomfortable to think of going off new platforms. I've got the easy button set up on Facebook and such. But what happens when you start to push yourself into that uncomfortable area of technology and take control back of your digital life? Enjoy the show.
Mike, thanks for hopping on. You're getting married here soon, I guess.
Oh, no, not until September of 2022.
2022, and
yeah.
The Reading Terminal is the destination.
It is. We're going to try and have a new type of theme and ambiance that normally people won't get at a church or at a reception hall.
So is it like up in the air that you could even get the Reading Terminal, or?
No, they actually have events. They have events at almost every night. They close at 6. They usually have more, I guess, professional, like larger events with corporates, but they have weddings and stuff on Saturdays. So it's a cool thing.
That is super exciting, dude. I can't wait to see the pictures with the low ceiling and all the signage and.
Yeah. They have lights too. They have like Edison lights and the whole thing. Really cool.
Mike, we met like in one of these situations that really resonates with why I started up this show. You reached out to me, I think, because we were interacting on LinkedIn, and correct me if I'm wrong. But is that how it started?
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You were at a code academy then, right? Helping people get into coding, some sort of program where come hang out with us, do our thing. We'll kind of just pour ourselves into you and you'll walk out with some skills, right?
Yeah, it was a software development bootcamp. We taught test-driven development and object-oriented programming with kind of like the open source languages, a lot of React, a lot of Ruby on Rails. We taught SQL backend technologies, but the goal was to really help people in the Philadelphia area who may not have a technical background per se, learn the basics of programming and coding so they could be able to get a job in the field. And we took people from all different ages and backgrounds. We just kind of wanted to focus on people that had specific skills in like solving puzzles and solving game theory problems very well. And we found that people in those that could be able to solve those could be able to also solve programming coding problems as well. So that's how we got started.
So maybe we have you introduce yourself as well.
Absolutely.
It was really cool meeting, and I'm glad you reached out to me. And I was really, really engaged in the crowdsourcing thing you were doing and pulling people in the tech community, because I had come in at like kind of mid-swing in my career. I mean, now mid-swing, but over the next 20 or 30 years, it won't be mid-swing. But yeah, I came in at like 30 years old, so it resonated with me from a sales perspective. But I think the door is much more wide open from a dev perspective. So, Mike, why don't you introduce yourself? We maybe got a little ahead of ourselves, but you're definitely a
Yeah.
Philly guy. Why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Absolutely. So, for my day job, I'm actually the associate director of emerging technology at Humana. I help manage and develop in rapid prototyping situations technologies that we either buy, build, or sell here at the company. Where we are a health insurance company first and foremost, but we also create what we call value-based services, where we actually create products, technical products, situations, platforms, so we can have our members and non-Humana members be able to interact in different, healthier ways. I also am an adjunct professor at Thomas Jefferson University Hospital, where I teach at the Institute of Emerging Health Professions. I pretty much teach an emerging technology course to physicians and get them familiar with new concepts like blockchain, machine learning, artificial intelligence, as well as how to utilize clinical data in more digital settings than physical ones. And I'm also just very involved in the blockchain worlds. I've been involved in blockchain technology in development or in open source working groups since around 2016, 2017. And I'm a big believer in kind of distributed, decentralized methods and systems.
Let's get right into the blockchain stuff then, man. Great intro. So what hit you with blockchain? Because I think when we first met in person, it may have been in a WeWork, and wherever it was, you were just like blockchain. And my perception was all crypto at that point, but I knew blockchain very theoretically, super uber high level. You were probably the first one to simplify it for me back in 2016. And you have not let up from what I can tell. We just caught up for the first time a couple of weeks ago. So what hit you about blockchain?
I think what
You
hit
know how
me
they say
about
music
blockchain,
hits you? You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
what hit you? Didn't mean, sorry to step on you.
no, no, no. I think what hit me mostly was like a different paradigm shift where a lot of our centralized and traditional systems that we use today, like Facebook, Google, Apple, a lot of their business model revolves around them curating and aggregating data and information from many multiple sources and people, and using people as the product, and then distributing the data information from us people without our consent, and then making money off of that. Originally, where I thought blockchain was very valuable was in the decentralized or distributed nature of being able to reimburse the individuals and people themselves for distribution and transactions of our data and of our information, and making people and individuals more autonomous and more a part of that whole data information transaction system is what really like spread it apart for me. Is that people that aren't technically inclined or that aren't could be able to have a piece of the pie or have a piece of the kind of transaction there where they would feel more empowered. And it's a method and a system that enables people to feel more empowered while also making a living potentially off of distributing details of themselves, where marketers, businesses, healthcare institutions, financial institutions could really benefit off that data information too. And a lot of that information, though, comes from many different third parties and many different parties that may not be intimately or directly involved with the person or the data or the information. When you're able to get data information from the source more so than anything, it's more true, it's more accurate, and people will feel more inclined to probably be a part of future surveys or future information sharing systems when you're part of that overall network.
Yeah, empower. And you talked about technically inclined. That's a big thing for me right now. But I don't know if I told you when we caught up. In the last few months, build a computer, made it open as possible, put OpenSUSE on it, all the software I use except for Zoom. And by the way, there's a story to that we'll get to on a sidebar. But yeah, I try to stay as open as possible because I want to empower myself, like my digital graphic software, open source, Inkscape, video editing software, Kdenlive, Audacity for audio, keeping it simple. But I put these things beyond me for decades, literally for decades. And it really just took an aim, right? And for me, it was kind of diving into learning some of the things you're talking about, empowering myself with technology, understanding always understanding how important it was, but taking that step to empower myself finally, it was easier than I thought. So I want to see more people do that. And then
That's
the other
crazy you
thing,
mentioned that, because I think so many times, especially older generations and people that aren't or haven't been connected with computers so much, they just trust the. Sometimes there'll be blind trust when it comes to technical systems, platforms, and software. And like for example, I have family out in the central Pennsylvania area, right? And they will interact and post every single detail on Facebook, like their location, their pictures, their where they're actually buying commerce, all those different things. And Facebook's monetizing off those details. And when I tell them about the system and the business aspect of it, like, oh well, that doesn't matter. I don't care. Like I don't have the time. I don't want to put the energy into understanding the system and kind of doing these things on our own. And it's kind of just like there's a separation of generation. I don't know what's the youngest generation now, Generation Z, whatever they call it, that generation. They actually
Zillennials, right? Zillennials, they call them, I think.
Zillennials. Oh Jesus, I have no clue. But I guess children that are born around 2000 and up,
Okay.
they are actually the opposite, where they're very aware of these platforms and how they're being monetized and how they may be taken advantage of. Whereas they may not be able to do the physical labor skills like mowing a lawn, vacuuming. And I'm not saying that's every generation, but it's when people spend more time in the digital world, they have less skills than they do in the physical world of being able to accomplish things, and vice versa too. It's so the people that do more things in the physical world will be very misinformed and not as active in the digital world too. So it's just there's a big divide now, I think, coming between people that interact digital first and people that interact physical first, and that's going to be a big shift in the next coming decades.
You know what, during COVID, a lot of things became apparent to me. Like I don't know what you call my generation. I was born in 81 and I refuse to be a millennial. There's really not too many things I do that are, prototypically millennial-ish. I think there's a lot of unique things that my generation, every generation, right? Whether we're in 81, 82, 85, yeah, everybody sees something unique. And I wasn't born in these things, but I wasn't, my internet exposure was like 12 years old, right? I was like diving into the web 11, 12. So I wasn't like you said, like these people born in 2000 up. They're deep in this like digital, what I call exposure, right? Where it's very natural from birth, literally, to understand that I'm just not exposed to the world that's physically accessible to me, but intrinsically exposed to everything in existence through this thing called technology.
Not to get too philosophical on it too,
No,
but
but that's like it, right? But anyway,
no, but like so in the physical world, we have so much land and so much everything that is already owned and for the most part operated and regulated, right? So like in the United States at least, there's not much land you could take and say this is mine. I could be able to create here and build something new. You can, but it's just less limited. Where in the digital world, there are it's almost there's almost no bounds, there's no means. You could be able to create any art, be able to own any type of digital land, be able to own any type of digital asset. And the creator economy there is probably as exciting and as new as it was for people in media back in about 50 60 years ago when it came to creating film, creating music, and all these other things. And doing it fully electronic and doing these digital mediums is what younger generations, like in esports and video games and all those type of worlds, that's gonna be probably more exciting for them to be part of those digital worlds than it is in the physical world because of all the opportunities they could have.
totally agree. And that's why people should care about this, right? That's why I'm so happy I forced myself to do maybe some of the hardest stuff, which was learn how to install applications with sudo commands, right? So I'm not beholden to OneNote or Evernote or some cloud platform, right? Like there's an other way. And it wasn't that hard. I had to do something that was a little uncomfortable, but it opened up a new world of possibilities because Joplin's the tip of the iceberg there, right? So that's why people should care, right? You get privacy, you get control, you can monetize your information. People are living rich lives, right? So why don't you talk about that, right? That was the next question. Like, why should people care? We've kind of already been talking about that. So, speak to any generation. You just spoke to the younger generation. Maybe we speak to people like me who are, maybe not understanding what's before them, right? Like, why should they really care? What's the potential? What could like tangibly be in it for people, right? They've already decided, okay, maybe it's not that difficult to dip my toes in here. There's other platforms I can go on besides Facebook and Instagram and things like that. What's in it for me? How do I start actually turning this into something that I could feel make a difference in my life?
There's a couple things there, I think. One is, for example, recently Jeff Bezos, in his final letter to the company of Amazon, when he stepped down as CEO and then became more of like a board member, or sorry, like more chairman, I believe. One of his secrets to success there was being able to be more of a creator than a consumer, right?
Mm,
And
mm,
the more you are a creator, the more you're able to be an individual, you'll be able to have personal success, and you'll be able to do more things autonomously through you rather than a third party or another service. I think so much of generations that are maybe, 80, 81 and below, that maybe 40 or up. I think a lot of those generations have become consumers when it comes to technology almost fully. And that isn't necessarily a problem. It's more of, you'll be you'll be more taken advantage of in these type of web 2 centralized systems, where companies like Facebook, like Google, like Apple, and the fangs, if you want to call them, they will be able to monetize and take advantage of you because you don't have enough autonomy to be able to run information and systems at scale like these companies can. And uh and that is where you'll get into situations where there'll be people that are 40 and up may become more reliant on these technical systems and won't know how to function or operate without them. And so if they don't know how to create their own interfaces, they don't know how to create their own information systems at scale, it'll be very difficult and hard for someone to be able to capture information. Like, so many families and people are uploading all their pictures on Facebook, right? What if Facebook just said tomorrow they could be able to change, right? They could just end it right here. You lose all those memories, you lose all those pictures. Google could do the same thing with Google Photos. They could just take their ball and leave at some point, right? Whereas, and that's why I mentioned the blockchain, the autonomy, and the individual like ownership of things. Like, you could be able to then upload your pictures and have them on cloud-based services, and be able to scale it and be able to have hundreds of thousands of photos stored here, and you'll be able to own it. You'll be able to be autonomous of it, and you'll be able to decide whether who sees it, who can share it, and who can access it. And there's just a couple examples, but I think being able to be more technically savvy, me being more technically involved, you'll be more of a creator than a consumer, and you'll be able to have more control over your digital information, as well as the information that's related to your identity, and how you're interacting with the world today.
Yeah, I see people becoming creators, right? I have friends starting ministries. I have friends starting small businesses around their hobbies. People are doing things, right? People spend a lot of time, not just over the last year, but I think over the last several years, consuming, right? Consuming a lot of information, consuming. Um, People are creating, right? So how are they exposed to blockchain today in parallel to the way they're living? And maybe they're not even aware of it, right?
Yeah, one kind of big example that may hit home for a lot of people is with this thing called non-fungible tokens. They're called NFTs. So NFTs are a way that helps validate that you own a digital asset, or you own a digital creation, or digital IP in any type of form or format. So one example is of digital collectibles and trading cards. Back when you and I were kids, and when we were interacting with people, we may have interacted with baseball cards, right? We would buy baseball cards at a store, and we would bring them home. We would see the pack. We would then either trade with our friends, or we would trade with others at convention centers, or big like trading galleries and stores. And that still goes on today. But there's now a new digital economy where people are able to buy digital representations of sports figures and their plays. So instead of just a digital card that shows a graphic, there's an organization called NBA Top Shot that creates a digital representation of a play. So it's usually anywhere from like 0 to 10 seconds, where a player can give a great dunk, like a Michael Jordan dunk or Joel Embiid fadeaway, and you can be able to own that moment and own the original video of that scene, and then you could be able to trade that video and trade out that play with other people in the digital world. And the only difference is it's held and stored on the digital world, you own the NFT, the non-fungible token, which then gives you the right to distribute the IP, to resell on the marketplace. Top Shot has a marketplace where you can be able to sell to others, as well as you could trade it with your friends or people you know in your direct network as well. And so that's one way you're kind of creating a new creator economy when it comes to digital video, images, and files, right? It's more like NFTs are able to validate the file, the MP3, the MP4, the JPEG that you've created or that you have attained attribution of, and how you're able to distribute to others.
So how do people start monetizing their talents, right? I have this concept called the talent economy, which mirrors the creator economy. And it just goes a little bit more into the philosophy of not just, being a creator and monetizing it, but a community of, creating for the purpose of sharing, so getting into the whole sharing valuable content, right? And that's what people are doing on Facebook, right? People are just intrinsically showing their life and where they're adding value to how to raise their kids, how they eat, where they go, what they invest in, everything, right? So these are representations by and large, or, cross section of that is their talent, right? Their talent stack. That's what they need to monetize, right? So how can people actually start doing that today? I know it's possible. I think people are starting to, understand that concept if they've had somebody explain to them non-fungible token. But because it doesn't seem accessible, I think people go like that, right? Mm-hmm. How do you get it? So I'm searching for like what could hit them where it like resonates in their day to day, where they're like, wow, now I make the connection. I can easily take this ministry I'm building, or this, small business, right? Or this hobby I'm trying to monetize, or this garden, right? Or this lifestyle I'm trying to monetize.
Yeah.
How can they actually start doing that today off of platforms like Facebook? Do they have to build their own community?
There's plenty of communities out there that are blockchain based that give them the right to create these economies and get more of the pie, if you want to say, if I could explain it that way. Substack is a good example of that for journalists, right? So instead of going to the New York Times or you're working for USA Today, you could be able to, on Substack, create your own following and then be able to receive micropayments over time for your talent that you're creating. So there's kind of blockchain-based platforms where, yes, they get a small percentage, anywhere between like 2 to 6% of your overall money and income that comes in. But the economics are more fair in a sense, I would say, in these blockchain-based platforms, because they are more so making. They're not taking any of your personal data. They're just having a platform there. There's some subscription fees for these, but they're very less limited than what happened in Web 2.0, right? And at some point in these new decentralized economies, right, it's very hard for them to raise the price or to raise the subscription fee because of the node ownership and because of the node distribution. So in one example of an NFT marketplace is called OpenSea. OpenSea is a platform where you put up a piece of art, it's time-stamped on something called a non-fungible token. And then from that time, moving forward, that Mike created this JPEG or created this file, and that any rewards or royalties or resell of this file then goes back to him, right? And you can do it for thinking of a friend that's a minister, right? Anytime he gives a sermon or anytime he's bringing community together, he could be able to say, to enter this room, you pay X amount of crypto or a percentage of your crypto, or you can make it free and have donations in crypto in those similar type of ways. It's more just instead of going to the US dollar in particular and trusting the Federal Reserve in particular with all your wealth and all of your distribution of talent and wealth and where it goes, you can be able to give it more to individuals. And all you really need is, I don't know if you heard about the Kevin Kelly article about 10 or 11 years ago, which was of 1,000 true fans. Kevin Kelly, who was an editor at Wired, he was a very famous individual. Back in 2004, actually, so that's about 20 years ago, he wrote this article saying the internet now unleashes the creator economy, and all you really need is 1,000 true fans to be able to accomplish and make money and do anything in a creative world, where you can make at least 100K a year doing XYZ.
Right.
But unfortunately, the platform companies like Facebook, Google, Apple, etc., They took advantage more so of the 1,000 True Fans, and they got you to 1,000 True Fans, but they undercut your overall spend, the overall money that you could get. And so it was harder for you to actually make that living. Now, though, in this decentralized economy where you're able to directly pay individuals more without as many fees, without as many overhead, and also too because we are more technically sound and there's more you have more ability to create these things on your own rather than having to use a Facebook to do these things. And so there was more technical maturity that had to go in between there. But as long as you can reach out to 1,000 true fans or even 100 true fans that are able to pay you X amount of money, you can make an actual living off of this. And I would say platforms like OpenSea, platforms like but I think OpenSea is probably the best one for someone that's not as technically sound now, but it's being able to run your own node, run your own server, and be able to create your own functions like that.
Yeah, I mean, so that's what I'm looking to learn about, and really I want to create my a community like that, right? I mean, I think you were hinting at that, right? There's the build your own, right? Become your own node, or use a platform that helps you become your own node. That's kind of why I built my computer. I kind of had this vision while I was also sitting there like contemplating this new digital exposure that people really needed to come to grips with, that I'm coming to grips with. When I was going into like the generational gap, like I started in print advertising, right? Like how dinosaur can that be in 2005? I had every opportunity to get into tech, right? But I like print advertising was still very relevant, right? Tablets weren't around. I mean, every newspaper was probably thriving. They didn't figure out how to make it consumable by a subscription on a big clunky terminal that you had in the corner of your living room, right? It was still kind of that in the early aughts. Wireless was just kind of getting into people's minds where they could, not be attached to a cord on their computer. So I'm like very, you know what I mean? Like, and I had to hop out of that. But I'm very much into, you can become your own data center in effect, right? And it doesn't take a lot. You just need to see that it's possible. I mean, I did a lot of this stuff. I was a data center. I kind of do, right? I got a powerful computer running under my desk. I, want to be able to walk into my house and build a program that syncs with my phone, grabs my photos, and puts it on my disk, or my storage device rather than Google's, right? And I want to know that it's backed up, and if I lose power, things aren't going to crash, right? Like all
another
those
point on that too, with like the computing power. So many younger kids today are actually playing like Fortnite and other games like that with a very highly qualified GPU or CPU that is able to fuel this whole gaming network that they kind of own and control. And so they're more savvy, more aware of how to run these up, spin these up, how to be able to keep them going. And so I think that's why younger generations too are so much into crypto, because through those same gaming processors, they can be able to mine and run their own node and mine for cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or Ethereum. And it's just more natural to them than it would be for older generations.
What could I go start monetizing on OpenSea today? Like, I'm a writer, I'm a musician. I got sales training advice I could give people. I mean, part of the thing I enjoy people's talent so much is that I enjoy kind of like, picking them up real quick and then deciding if I, really, really like them or not. Like, I don't really, really like building computers, right? I know I have a laptop here that I'm contemplating on opening up, and it's totally capable. It just needs to be refurbished. I could take it down the street, give it to a guy to load Windows on it, or I could kind of break it apart and, remake it like I did the one from scratch. But, I'd rather create other things, right? But, now I know how to do it. It's in my talent stack, right? I could teach somebody else to do it. So how do I start monetize like on OpenSea? What could I actually go monetize there?
All you would do is you would create so similar to, have you ever used Coinbase to create an account? Like
use what? I'm sorry.
Coinbase, like, or a crypto account?
Oh yeah, sure.
So a lot of times they'll just validate your information, who you are. They'll have you take a picture of your driver's license or some type of passport to validate that you are who you say you are. Then they give you pretty much access to a private key. So a private key in cryptography is just being able to unlock this network and be able to be part of it. You can either have a word phrase, of about 16 words. You have to write down. We'll highly suggest you write that down on a piece of paper and put it into cold storage or put it into like a safe. Or you can use these other methods where you can have it on a flash drive. There's many different ways you can do that. It's either a word phrase or a number phrase. You take that down, and you can only access this network if you enter in those details and information into OpenSea. Then from there, you have your own kind of, they give you pretty much, you are a validator in this network. So like you are part of a node and you have the details associated to you and your node. And then everything you create, whether it's music, whether it's writing, whether it's sales pitches information, whether it's, all those things you mentioned, they're attributed to your node and you're part of the network. And so that's uploaded through your node. There's a block that is then created on the blockchain, and it has your private key information. So not your public key, it's your private key, or sorry, it's your public key, not your private key, so that they can validate that it is you, that the information accessed to you is you. And you then put it on this resale market on OpenSea. And if others believe that your art or your creation is worthy, they will pay for a percentage of the rights to be able to access and see it. So if they want to see you playing music, playing the guitar, they will pay whatever you put down as the price of them to be able to have access to it. So whether you think it's $5 per click or $10 per click, it typically isn't a very high mark because there's some economics to it in a sense where like, unless it's like Jack Dorsey for Twitter put in an NFT, his original tweet for Twitter. And that went for what, I think $200,000, which is ridiculous. But so like you and I may not have that clout to be able to do so. But what I've done is for certain things, like for different presentations I've given for blockchain talks and like what it is, I've actually put it on things like OpenSea for $5. And I've had maybe 5 people pay for that equivalent of $5, except it went into my ETH address and it went to my ETH wallet. So when you create these OpenSea nodes, those details that I said go into a digital wallet, and then your digital wallet then takes in your crypto from people paying for the access to the creation that you have created. So that's pretty much it.
Wow, that's really cool. I think I told you I got involved in Mirror a couple weeks ago. I didn't get selected as as one of the 10 lucky winners. I probably have to be engaged in the community a little bit more to get some clout. It's probably
a lot of people on Discord. And so a lot of people will go on Discord and different chat channels to be able to show that they are human.
Yeah, so my sob story for not getting selected for right. Yeah, I didn't get my right tokens, but you just described right? And I'd love to get in there. I'd honestly really love to, as a writer, a modern writer, establish myself in this community. I like writing every day, right? So how do I become part of that community? So I'm not just this creeper throwing something in one time and then, put my tail between my legs and crying because I didn't get any attention. There's a bigger thing I want to plug into and ease my way into, and kind of earn my clout and, get the votes over time. So how do I start wading in? You mentioned Discord, right? So I'm kind of teeing it up. I think I know where it might go.
Yeah. So it's joining these Discord communities where you can interact, and a lot of times it's either through social capital or financial capital.
Time out. Can we talk about what Discord is real quick? Like,
Discord's Discord's like a chat platform where it's more so tied to your IP of your computer than it is anything else, and it validates your location, your software, and that you're on the similar software you uploaded with. It's actually very hard to replicate it, and it's cryptographically protected so that no one can. It's very hard for someone to replicate or take over your identity and create a fake account.
Yeah, I was real quick. I was looking into it recently because of all this, right? I'm just getting, I'm kind of taking that leap. Then we get into this weird thing of Discord, and it's funny. I always stayed away from Discord because of the concept of a server. I was like, do I have to launch a server and like spin up an AWS instance? So I always just literally stayed away from it because they called their rooms or communities servers. Yeah, just goes to show you how crazy the brain is. But Discord is a really easy to use platform. It's like any other chat platform or social platform people have ever used. But I want to drive home the point that you just mentioned there. In my experience, which is very limited at this point, uber sensitive in terms of how they let you in, how they validate who you are. When you get into these communities, you have to, on Facebook, they ask you to ask some questions, and it's bubblegum and candy. They're not putting you through the ringer. It's not uncomfortable, but you're going in somewhere, that you're walking in a front door, that's put together, right? Like there's something probably going on there. Anyway, like I think that's a huge point. It's not like this, this unsecure gaming community where SUSE is on there, right? Oh, there's a huge open SUSE community. Anyway, so go ahead. Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about Discord.
No, Discord,
right? I'm trying to drive friends off Facebook, and literally I'm trying to get off Facebook and things like that too, to do these communities, but I'm wading into it. So yeah.
No, it makes
Tell me more.
Sense. Discord's like this. Telegram is like this. Telegram's another cryptographically protected chat room. Status is fully blockchain based. So it's fully decentralized, where you actually have to attach to a crypto wallet to be able to validate, or a digital wallet to validate who you actually are. There are
How about Element? How about Element?
Element is one of those two. I just haven't used it.
Yeah, I found it. Okay. How about Geneva? Did you hear about Geneva yet? I found those guys.
I have heard of Geneva. Never used it though.
Right. My buddy's part of a startup in this space called Illumi, right? Like this collaboration platform along the lines of Discord, and giving people a better way to collaborate, create groups, do projects, share their talents, build communities is huge. So keep going.
Yeah, and when you're on these platforms, there's two type of ways, right? There's maybe three. There's exchanging knowledge to others. So if you know specific other platform, or if you know specific other cryptos, if you know specific other methods in these worlds that could benefit others, posting knowledge on there and showcasing that what you're talking about, and know that you know about blockchain, crypto, and kind of these decentralized methods helps. Another way is to be able to distribute crypto and financial capital to others. So being able to upvote on or being able to go into these digital systems like OpenSea and whatnot, and paying for other people's creations and showing that you actually validate other people's art and creation and work is another way to actually show that you are part of the community and you want to see the community grow. And then another one is through social capital, by bringing other people in, by referring others into the community who are actual people who are interested and knowledgeable about this space too, is another way that helps generate your respect and generates your value. So bottom line is you have to do something in these communities and be active in order to get like the more rewards. And like crypto communities are different than anything I've ever experienced. In more conservative communities, it's kind of like the philosophy of like, not in my backyard, like I'm going to build my land and do what's right for me and my family, and that's great. And there's more democratic or socialistic type of philosophies where it's we must do all for all no matter what, and kind of appreciate and be respectful of others' philosophies, minds, and mindsets. In crypto communities, it's more of let's win and help win. There's no losers, there's no discrimination. It's let's help everyone get to a point where they can accept crypto, where they can be able to distribute crypto, no matter where and what border and what origin they come from. And it's very empowering. And that's another empowering factor of these type of decentralized crypto worlds is it doesn't matter what your appearance is, it doesn't matter where your location is in the world. It's just that you've been able to run up a server, you've been able to run up a node, and you're able to interact in this community, and people are very, very friendly.
Listen, people, the new win-win is win. There's no win-win, right? Two people don't have to get some sort of piece of something. Yeah. It's win, man. Everybody just wins when you do it right. And I think that's what a lot of these communities are focused on when they're doing it the right way. They're not trying to stake a claim. They're not trying to signal their virtue. They're just trying to lift for the sake of, that's what I should be doing. And that's what I can do. That's probably the thing I should be doing. I'll focus my energy on that. I think it's a beautiful thing, man. I think it really is. How do you tie this? How'd you tie this into your career? We'll start to wrap up, I guess. We're getting to the top of the hour.
Yeah.
How did you tie this into your day-to-day? It's been over time, right? When I met you, You were working at the you were working at
I
the Code
consensus.
Academy,
Yeah,
and then you went on a trajectory from there. And I'm really happy to see what you're doing at Humana. I can't wait to learn more. I mean, we work in the same industry. We both kind of are in this emerging technology space. Myself from the open source vendor space. You're from the enterprise building their own stuff with open source, which I think is everything which these communities are about. I get to live in day to day, like in my day job, right? It's not utopia by any stretch. It's a job, but it's really cool to be part of something that is open, that is part of this. Everybody gets a piece of the pie. New business models, right? Not trying to do it the same old way. So everything we touch seems to be emerging. And that's exciting, right? So I have kind of just kind of teeing up the question, figured out that I worked it into my day job a little bit, and I'm blessed to have done that. So how'd you do that, man? Like,
I did it from just going to blockchain and crypto conferences. I went to a UPenn conference back in 2016 where I met the founders, one of the founders of Ethereum, who was creating a company called Consensus Systems, and he just wanted to find others that could be able to kind of do this explanation, selling, and detailing of what blockchain and Ethereum was. And so I got in from that company, and from there I worked at Accenture for a couple of years doing consulting of blockchain, where we built a lot of systems for enterprise companies, more in the permission blockchain space, which is not a fully decentralized model, but it got to a point where you could bring multi-parties together, multi-companies together to be able to interact on data information where they couldn't do it originally before. They didn't have the incentive system to do so. And then the past couple, I would say 2.5 years, I've more worked in the blockchain healthcare world, where trying to create systems where patients get more incentivized for distributing and granting consent and access to details and information related to their health. And then at my day job today at Humana, we help run the largest healthcare insurance blockchain, where we help for the data accuracy problem, because a lot of we as a payer, as they call it in healthcare world, we help pay hospitals to be able to run their services and their products and whatever they create. And then we help report those findings to the federal government, which is specifically the Center for Medicare and Medicare Services, Medicaid and Medicare Services. And from there, back in the day, about 10 years ago, health insurance companies didn't have the best incentives for accurately reporting those findings of how much they were spending on hospitals and how much the actual care and services and whatnot actually cost. And so sometimes there'd be misinformation or inaccurate data reports that were going to Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services. Now in our blockchain environment, we have to be more honest with each other, because we can call out different. So we have a consortium with ourselves at Humana, United Health Group, Aetna, Quest Diagnostics, and some others, where if they're reporting in the state of Texas, for example, that we had about 95% of all of our payments and claims be attributed into these different locations. And so we're reporting that to Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services. And we at Humana are saying, oh no, we're 95% inaccurate. We can be able to call out, and there's kind of like crypto incentive methods we have within the consortia to be able to do that. But long story short, I think it was going to conferences, it was going to events, it was going to meet other people in blockchain and crypto, and then talking with those about how we could create projects and how I could be able to help out their teams. And because my skill sets are more so in presenting and in doing the kind of non-technical things, but I've been able to be an autodidact and self-taught individual and be autonomous, and in learning these systems to be able to create them for myself and be able to explain them to people that are C-level executives that are maybe running startups and companies, and they're also technical and engineering leaders too. So I'm more of on the product strategy, product development angle when it comes to these teams. And so I've taken that type of skill set to be able to build it in major companies. So
you've built a talent stack for yourself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, over time, I would say, I would venture to guess you conscientiously took on different challenges as you waded through the career decisions.
And took risks. I mean, like going to Consensus at the time, like I was getting paid in crypto. I was getting paid in Ethereum fully. And it was definitely an uncomfortable feeling. it was in 2017 we went full crypto in payments, and I didn't know how to really handle that because and the transaction fees from Ethereum to then US dollar at the time was insurmountable, and then there was a lot of regulatory oversight onto it, so it was an uncomfortable feeling at first. But now it's like if I were to be paid in crypto today, I'd feel a lot more comfortable of it. I get paid in US dollars, so I get paid in a traditional currency. But it was just learning those risks, going through those situations, and being confident, and just having specific values too. So I had values that I would only join teams and projects that eventually would help get to distribution and decentralization rather than using Web 2.0 methodology. And there was a whole set of values I had for it. That's a longer story, but I stuck to those values more so and made sure that I wouldn't join a team or a company or a project that didn't meet the values I created for myself. So that was a lot of it too.
And that's part of open source, which is taking value in what you can do. So is a lot of what you do with your blockchain work open source? Do you rely on that a good bit?
Yeah. So one of the more projects I'm proudest of is actually open sourced with the Linux Foundation in a project called Hyperledger Cactus. I helped create that in 2018, and we open sourced that function to get other people familiar with how to be able to go from one blockchain to another with their data state. Another thing I've done is worked on a lot of different open source working groups like the Linux Foundation, Hyperledger, like Blockchain Healthcare Today. I used to run a consortium called the Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition. I'm no longer part of it, but it was a fantastic working group where we brought people from the World Economic Forum and others together to create these monetary and economics incentive systems that could benefit everybody, and did a lot of research there. So a lot of it was in open source, and also with IEEE and HIMSS as well. Being part of those open source working groups and creating projects and things together helped the building blocks to be able to make projects fully open sourced, or for some things like our health insurance blockchain consortium is proprietary and that is permissioned. And so we only access that, but not everything I don't think everything has to be open source, but especially, personal health information and reporting services to the federal government, that probably doesn't need to be open sourced. But for anything that's not highly compromising or valuable, or would be penalized under GDPR, General Data Protection Rights Act, I think those things could be open source and should be open source.
In the healthcare business, where that democratization of data that is, shareable, and whatever it is, having the ability to share it, I think maybe requires blockchain the way they want to. And it's important, right? I mean, that's how you're going to drive down costs for these things. So I applaud you for driving it into the business, because I had a colleague or a connection tell me recently that they didn't think blockchain was going to hit the enterprise in any type of meaningful way. I kind of scratched my head. I said, I respect that. From your perspective, maybe you're not even understanding the question I'm asking, right? But I'm glad to hear things like this are happening, because I remember looking at, at the 10Ks and, different chairman reports and CIO interviews and presentations, all the things that, the difference makers do in the healthcare world or any world, right? Everybody was talking about democratization of data. And, at the time, spending a lot of focus on the plumbing of how that data moved, rather than, how does it move? What's the philosophy it moves under? And that's what I love about what I do today versus, in a previous life, which is, you're really open, like truly nothing is, it's there, right? It's there. And I think it makes a huge, huge difference. And I think
there is a big thing to the plumbing, and it's not the easiest thing. So getting many different enterprises to agree on sharing data information together in a mutual way is a huge paradigm shift. It's a huge philosophical shift. And I will say I'll be the first one to say it's not easy. It's not easy getting all of us companies on the same page, as well as for this data and semantic representation of data, because each company, like we at Humana, report out to Center for Medicaid and Medicare differently than United Health Group does, and differently than Aetna does. And so being able to create uniformity of data semantics is a very huge and timely problem. In the end, it'll be beneficial over time. It's not going to make you a billionaire. There'll be some millionaires in blockchain, but it's not going to make you billions. Whereas like AI and machine learning, if you have a very valuable algorithm and a lot of people use your algorithm, you can make billions off of that. And so that's probably why you're not seeing as many people looking to generate massive wealth off blockchain, because
Interesting.
it's more about distribution. It's more about democratization of data information. Whereas these other forms of emerging technology make people more rich than they do spread wealth.
There's a little personal lesson for you people. Maybe people don't understand the context of which you're asking the question, because my interest was not in how do we monetize it, like where is it going to blow up in, like specifically to make us money. I'm not saying that's where the person's head was where I was asking that, but that's where my head was where I was asking it. Was it anywhere, right? Like, is there anything happening in a meaningful way? And it sounds like with what you're doing, there is. I think it's not just in the complex ecosystem of healthcare data. It could be in the data of your homes, right? So if people can build open source tools and build blockchain technology to protect and to share and to help the people rise around them that are important in such a complex industry.
And they can join to these blockchain-based platforms where they can disclose some data information, and as long as they're more part of the economic puzzle, like it's still beneficial to be part of that. So you don't have to run your own node to be part of this. We highly suggest it and highly encourage it, but not everyone wants to be technical. So there are ways that you can still be part of these blockchain-based systems that allow you to receive more incentives than it does for others.
Good point. You have to lean out though, right? I mean, you have to lean into these new areas, right? You have to really value, the value of what you do. Pull it off. You used a really strong term, man, when you talked about the exploitation, of these platforms. I think that's maybe the thing, right? I think we totally agree. There are non-technical people, right? And part of what I want to do, and maybe I got to start leaning into more, as I told you about this when we talked personally a couple of weeks ago. I want to help people overcome this thing, right? Maybe work with some of these 20-year-olds that are not exposed to it like other kids, and help them get exposed to it.
We in the Philadelphia area, we're very aware of it, because there's actually still 21% of residents in Philadelphia in the city that do not own or own a mobile device or a computer in their house. And
20%?
21. Just 2 years ago, it was at 28%. Now it's getting better.
And what do you consider, Mike? What do you consider the Philadelphia area when you say that? Is that the metro area?
So that's
the
city
limits?
That's the city limits right now. When it comes to suburban, it's different. I think it's less. It's more towards 11 to 13%. But that's because of farms and farmlands, and most of that is people that produce actual like produce and things. And so it's way better. It's better than the suburbs, but there is a divide there, and the more you can bridge that gap and bridge that divide, like that's why there's a lot of crypto companies in Africa and in Nigeria in particular that are being able to give people for the first time their own digital wallets, so they could be able to buy things and create wealth on their own rather than being sufficed to the government. And so there's a lot of projects like that in other parts.
And that's the other thing with open source. So you don't have to be technically inclined, Mike, but if your situation is, I have limited resources, there are ways to, you have to get the parts to build the computer, right? GPUs are hard to find, right? And they're going to require you buy
an outlet. An outlet is difficult sometimes.
But no, and that's an open source, right? After the hardware, until I paid a subscription for Zoom, which was just, I didn't want to do it, but it was the easy button, and I had the time to do what I needed to do with OBS. Other than that, I didn't pay $1 for any software. So after the hardware, it was lit, and I have the ability, everything I've done for my podcast, except for the Zoom recording, which only started on like episode 7, right? So I was actually doing podcasts with free software, video graphics, video, everything, right? So anyway, yeah, I'm into it, Mike. I'm glad that you're exposing this to the enterprise, right? You're helping get into the enterprise, your day job. You've shared with me some things that I'm going to take into what I'm building. Is there anything you want to say to kind of wrap things up, bud? Just to put a cap on this. I really appreciate the conversation.
Distribution democratization is going to help us all become more part of the digital world. And The creator economy is never been better than in the digital world, and in blockchain-based systems, you can be able to earn more of that, more of those incentives. That's all.
Can you give us one community specific? Can you give us one specific thing to go
I would
do?
say
You mentioned a lot of
OpenSea is the one I've seen most credible and has done the most work in the creator economy. But anything that's related to Ethereum and the Ethereum Foundation probably has more legs than others.
Cool. Mike, thanks a lot, man. I will say thank you. We'll drag this out here. Really fun conversation.
Let the beat rock.